What's good? What's good? What's good in the hood? And welcome back to another episode of the Good in the Hood podcast. I am, as always, your host, Juice. This week, man, I'm joined with a special guest, man. Special guest, Chicago artist. Been pushing for a good decade now, almost. I guess, as far as releasing projects.
Since I was 17 in 07.
Man.
So
so even longer than that. Yeah.
Coming up on 14 years, yeah.
So if you don't know, man, this is Defcee, man. How you feeling today, brother?
Man, I feel good. I'm happy to be able to have this conversation, and I appreciate your ear. I appreciate your perspective. So I'm really looking forward to kind of having this conversation with you today. I'd be down to do it even if it wasn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
or the podcast, you know?
For sure. That's love, man. It's love for real. And I definitely want to get into like your story because like I said, we kind of talked about beforehand, like I feel like we have similar taste in music just by listening to your music. Just by hearing you rap, I feel like I know this guy. I know this person. I can relate to what his messaging and everything he's saying. You rap about neighborhoods that I grew up around. I grew up in Maywood, so you rap about River Forest and Forest Park. I'm like, I know those spots. You know what I'm saying? So it's definitely connection there. And as far as just pure love for lyricism, I definitely connected with you. So I definitely want to get into like your start in hip hop and like what opened the door for you and what made you walk through that door.
My two older sisters, Bree and Tiffany, who my mom met when she was doing some tutoring in Chicago. My parents had just moved. They weren't married yet, or maybe they just got married. They moved to Chicago from Detroit. And my mom started doing some tutoring and she met these two young women. And then, they just kind of became, not necessarily adopted because they had their own family and, they were doing all right. But more so they were starting to, they would spend summers with us, like they would babysit us. And I remember when I think I was 2 or 3 years old, I always kind of get the years mixed up. Like I go back on, like I'm confident I know the answer. And then I go on Wikipedia and realize that this song came out a lot later than I realized. But they went to a Crisscross concert with my dad. And my dad is like, hip hop is like the one genre he appreciates it, but he just can't get into it.
Yeah, I feel that. That's that generation. That generation just doesn't get it, kind of.
Yeah, he's got, and it's crazy too, because like my dad has a really progressive taste in music. So, Girl Talk, the DJ, my dad was like into his music before a lot of other people were really into it and was like into Radiohead and, all types of, and jazz music and soul and blues. So my dad was into pretty much everything except for hip hop. And so my god sisters, they asked him to take them to a Crisscross concert and they brought home a cassette copy of the Jump single. And I lost my mind. I was like running around the apartment. I was like scratching the armchair because it sounded like a DJ cutting on a record. And then it was just pretty much on from there. Like hip hop really kind of informed my perception of like my taste in music overall. You know what I mean? Like that was the first music I really remember falling in love with.
For sure.
And then, I would listen to the radio a lot. I used to I got ADHD, so I used to like walk to school freestyling to myself and all that.
So that's what got you in it. I'm kind of more curious, like of course hip hop, the hip hop sound was around us all, like for sure. But I want to know like what made you like when you said, you know what, I can do this shit. Like I'm good at this shit. Like what was that moment and what artist kind of triggered that for you?
So that moment came a lot later. I pretty much started writing raps kind of just impulsively in the back of my mom's minivan on the way back from the Sox game. And that was the first time I wrote anything down. And the first 2 bars were absolutely terrible. and I had like a terrible rap name and everything, but it was pretty much.
No, you gotta tell us the rap name now. You gotta tell us to us now.
No, I can't, man. I can't.
Is
My
that bad?
top card is gonna get pulled because
I would tell you. I'll tell you like 3 of my horrible rap names. You tell me one of yours. I got like 3 that are horrible. I'll go first to get the pressure off of you. I'm saying I'll go first.
Okay. I got it.
Go ahead.
I remember I saw like a preview. I was in Connecticut, and there was like a fall music preview, either in the local newspaper in Hartford, or it was like in USA Today or something. And I saw Sadat X's name, and I think it was for the first Sadat X solo album in '99. And I never listened to Sadat. Like I'd never listened to brand new.
Right. It's the cool name. It was a cool
name. And I was just like, oh, what if you flip it backwards? And it was Ecstatus, which made absolutely no sense. I have no idea why I thought that was a good idea. You can still I used it for way longer than I should have. Like I'm pretty sure.
I mean, you could have. That's a nice flip to it. You could go with the Exodus type of thing, which it's a little flip there.
Yeah, you know? I was not that. I wish you were my friend back then, because I definitely, needed that input, because that name was not good. That was like the definition of appropriation. I took a black rapper's name, used it as my own, and flipped it backwards. Which,
man!
It's terrible. So there are a lot of reasons why it was just.
Okay, I didn't think about that part. I didn't think about that part of it. Yeah, for sure. Smart move. My first rap name was Genesis. It was with a J. Genesis.
Oh, okay, that's not bad, man.
You ain't see. You gotta think about it as a rapper, right? You're a super rapper, so you can imagine that when I rapped with that name, I just had to rhyme as much with Genesis as possible.
Oh yeah,
it got very ugly. I got nemesis, ridiculous. I was stupid. It was bad times, man, bad times. But like we're talking about like your artistry. I definitely want to get into like you as a human real quick. Like how is 2020 and now 2021 been treating you, and of course the huge shift in humanity and society as a whole? Like how was that treated you, your craft and your personal life?
I think it's done a couple of things for me. So for those of you who may not be familiar with me or my work, in addition to being a rapper and co-facilitating Rec Shop with Add2, shout out to Add2, one of the best rappers and mentors anywhere, forget just the city. And so I'm a full-time teacher in this Chicagoland suburb. And so the transition from in-person teaching, where it really kind of felt like I was making headway with my students in terms of getting them on track, to then everything shuts down and we're remote, was pretty jarring. I know that creatively, I've been incredibly productive. I've, put away a couple of EPs. One of them just dropped. I've put together like a few, albums. I'm working on a couple more. I have, usable home setup that can get passable recordings in my apartment. So I've just been writing and recording a whole bunch. So, I mean, creatively, it couldn't have been better. And then as a human being, I think even as introverted as I am, it was still a huge kind of shock to the system to now have to deal with, I'm pretty much around people all day, every day for 40 hours a week, I'm at home by myself and I've got to figure out what to do with all of this free time I have on my hands. In addition to, there are a lot more distractions that could potentially keep me from being effective in my job. So it's definitely been a delicate balance. I mean, obviously the world politically has never been a fair or equitable place. And I think since the pandemic began, I've also kind of found myself I shouldn't have been surprised, but very kind of deeply disappointed in terms of a lot of the governmental response to the crisis, and just knowing that there are countries who have similar resources to ours, some even fewer, who have really been trying to do right by their citizens and paying people to stay home, and, you know, not politicizing what's essentially a healthcare issue with, you know, whether or not it's okay to wear a mask.
Hey, come on, just you put it on. Like, all you gotta do is put the mask on.
It's not, and you know, my wife is, she works in healthcare, and, you know, what she told me was like, you know, how can anybody talk about, you know, masks restrict your breathing or are uncomfortable? You have neurosurgeons who spend 12 hours in the operating room with the same mask on, and they don't complain about that. Yeah. So, but yeah, like I think
the logic there is so flawed.
Yeah, I mean, it almost doesn't exist.
For real.
So, you know, I think I've had a lot of time to sit with that and think about it. So, I think, you know, that weight, a lot of people are carrying that, and then some people are carrying even more of that weight because, you know, all of these inequities that I'm talking about have kind of been amplified since the beginning of the pandemic. So yeah, I mean, my worldview is definitely kind of sharpening into focus. I've gotten married since the pandemic began, which is amazing.
Congrats,
yeah,
man.
Thank you. To somebody wonderful who's like, and we'll probably get into this later, but is a major reason why I kind of kept rapping at a point where I would have stopped, and, you know, right before I think I was on my way somewhere productive. And just, yeah, you know, makes me happy, you know, roasts me, pushes me to be, you know, better in, you know, every way, including with the music stuff. So that's been phenomenal and amazing. And I'm definitely incredibly fortunate to have the job I do and to have the support I do and the people I do, because, you know, a lot of people are not able to have that right now. And I don't, you know, want to take any of that for granted. So with all of the heavy stuff that we see in the news and all of the heavy stuff I've been thinking about, at the same time, I'm also, in terms of how I've been personally, you know, I've been very blessed and very lucky to be blessed in certain ways since the pandemic began. So
for sure,
a lot of ups, a lot of downs.
So salute to you and your significant other, your wife, for one, you being a teacher, her working in healthcare. Was a two essential jobs for sure. And we
thank you.
Yeah, I think I speak to most of America when I say thank y'all for that. Like, that's important out here. Like especially seeing what's going on with CPS, Chicago public schools. I know you see in the suburbs, but like still, man, teachers are not paid enough, man. Like I know as a person who was once a badass kid, like teachers are not paid enough, man. Like I could not have dealt with me as a child. I couldn't imagine. So talk to me about balancing like life then, like, cause like I can't imagine like being a school teacher by day, and then gotta be a rapper by night, you know what I'm saying, while being a husband throughout all of that. You know what I'm saying? So talk to me about how that is, especially through this crisis we're going through.
I mean, I've gotten a lot better at maintaining the balance. I think initially, unfortunately, I was being pretty thoughtless, because it was like, oh, I have all this free time to create, and then there's an entire other person who's here. Yeah. So, you know, and so things like that, I think I was not great at balancing initially, but then I just kind of figured out a routine and tried to fall into that. And then, you know, try my best to really try to take this time to be more disciplined. You know, where I work is like, I commute 20 hours a week to my job, to and from my job. So now that I have this time to really kind of like chill, it has made it a lot easier for me to really get into that kind of self-care and self-discipline, you know, where I may not have had the energy for it before, or the opportunity to do it, just because of how much time I was spending away from home.
For sure. And in preparation for this interview, I was able to do a little back catalog, I'm saying, search, listen to some old Defcee. And like I told you before we started recording, I listened to Damn Near Grown back when it first dropped in 2015. Like I remember a couple mutual friends on there. I was like, oh, this is a dope project. I heard of you since then and kind of try to stay in tune with you since then, but I can't lie to you. There's an in-between part there when I was broke and I was like, man, Bandcamp, I don't know, dog. I can't lie. But I definitely went back and I was able to hear all the projects, man. And I did not know grand totals existed. I'm ashamed to say
Oh
that,
wow.
honestly. And
Okay.
that is incredible, bro. Like you
Thank
and Ben, I was like seriously, like shockingly, like, oh man, this is where was I at? How did I miss this? I guess it's like my entire that's what I listen to. That's the kind of vibe I listen to. So it was definitely dope hearing that. The summer courses joint, yeah, that was smooth, nice listen. I'm saying bars is there. And I kind of want to know, like, man, like, where do you stylistically, like, what do you think your influences lie? I definitely want to hear it from you. Like, I have a thought of where some of your influences, but I want to see if I'm correct. I hear certain people.
All right, so I mean, my favorite rapper of all time is Sean Price. So that's kind of like so he's rest in peace to
Rest in
Sean
peace, P, man.
But like I came up really I remember
Mike
hearing
Tyson.
Yeah, Mike Tyson. I remember
Yes,
I remember coming up and listening to Onion Head and the Monkey Bars album and just being like, it was the first time that I was able to hear something that had that kind of content, but with humor in it that was still that direct. Like I think sometimes Ray and Ghost are like super funny rappers, but they, it's in subtle ways.
Yeah.
Punchline rappers are funny for a different reason. But Sean P was the first one I heard where it was just like, you really you got a sense of who he was. He didn't take himself too seriously as a person, but he took himself incredibly seriously as an MC. And I think he had a huge impact on me in terms of how I write rhymes and like what I do with syllables or different flows or cadences. I think influenced the kinds of beats I pick and want to rap on. Certainly like Jay-Z, Nas, Andre 3000, Scarface is a huge influence on me.
These are amazing names you're saying, right? Some amazing names right here. Some amazing names for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and that's before I really even get into the legends from Chicago who really had an impact on me. So my big brothers and Tomorrow Kings and Lamont Manuel and Rich Jones and Sky Mob, Speedy Calhoun, Showbiz, Solar 5, Slime, Angel Davenport, just, so many. They're just, it's crazy because it's kind of hard to keep the list short.
Yeah, for sure.
Because like there's so much. I try to really seek out the new stuff to be checking out because I always want to make sure I'm as sharp as I can possibly be. And I want to make sure that when I'm listening, like I'm being inspired by what it is I'm listening to write to an even better degree.
For sure, man. And definitely having you on here definitely sparked me kind of questioning like about Chicago's music scene a little bit because for me growing up, I remember Chicago music scene kind of being more conscious. I'm saying more like of that more lyrical approach, more that soul sample. Common was the guy. You know what I'm saying? Kanye West came and he had a soul sound. Lupe, like it's like artists like these who just hit the scene. Everyone knew them from Chicago as these lyrical guys. Well, at least Lupe and Common more so than Kanye as far as true lyrical. Rhyme Fest, another perfect example of that. How do you feel about how Chicago music scene treats its lyricists today?
Man, that's a crazy question. Well, I can kind of only really speak to my experience, which is that the MCs who really know how to rhyme in Chicago, like we tend to find each other.
Yeah. Y'all are a nice group of people. I can find all of y'all in one spot. This is the show I'm going to. The whole lineup is just full of spitters. So I appreciate that every time.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of, for me, that's the kind of appreciation that I want. Like I think that, and I think, there are other people who would say the same thing. I think if we've learned anything from the past 10 years, which I know is something we're going to talk about, it's that no matter how many barriers between MCs and the industry you either put up or take away. At the end of the day, the people who are really serious about their craft, they always tend to get the looks, you know, like that's the, you know, like there's a certain level to which you can spend a whole bunch of money to pave over the fact that you're mediocre or unoriginal. And, you know, it's cool because the music industry will use you up and spit you out, and then you got to figure out what to do from there. Or, you know, you play yourself in a super public way, and then you got to figure out how to put the pieces back together again and really get at it. But I think that the people in Chicago, like Chicago's a city that appreciates lyricism and appreciates really good rapping. You know, I think people like Herbo are an example, people like Bibby, and then even if you go all the way back to Juice, Twista, Psychodrama, Do or Die,
Smart,
Crucial Conflict, yep, D.A. Smart, right, Esilla, you know, like there are just so many MCs from Chicago who really know how to rhyme. And I think while we've definitely, you know, there may have definitely been things that have been said or done that might have lived up to the reputation that we earned in some ways as a crab bucket. I do think that what we've seen, like, I think post Save Money, to be real, is a shift in terms of like, there's a lot more of an emphasis on community building. And so, as I was saying before, and I'm sorry if I'm too long-winded or if I'm
good, man. You good. But, you good.
I think the MCs in Chicago find each other, show each other love, and encourage each other to keep going. And so, yeah, no, I definitely feel appreciated. And you know, I'm not from, also just to be straight up, and I know I've spoken about this before, like I'm from the suburbs. I'm not from Chicago. And
man, so I ain't trying to hear that, man. I know people be on that for real, but if you from Chicago, you know there are certain suburbs of Chicago that are right there. Like they, like you're not like in Springfield or like in Ottawa or something, or Oswego. Like you know what I'm saying? You
right. And I appreciate that, but I also have that understanding of like, you know, I respect the city. I respect the fact that I didn't necessarily have to deal with some of the same things that people who grow up in the city have to deal with. And so, you know, that's something that I gotta acknowledge as well. And I'm lucky that, and I think the other thing when it comes to lyricism as well that Chicago does is it makes sure that you know what it is you're doing. Because if you don't know what you're doing, people are either gonna ignore you or they're gonna play you to the left, unless you have good people around you who are really gonna, like, try to help you and put some energy into what it is that you do so that you can return that energy to them.
And just kind of like going back to my point, I ain't mean to, like, I'm saying, but like at the same time, like this artists from Chicago who are from Chicago, but they're suburbs of Chicago, like low key. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like they're parts of Chicago that's not Chicago, you know? Like the Chicago people want to paint, they're not always from those areas. But I agree. I feel what you're saying. I feel what you're saying for sure. And I kind of want to get like more into like you as an artist, because you like were honestly ahead of the game in many ways to me. Because when I was, like I said, coming up and seeing like the blog era and seeing artists drop music, everything was damn near free at the point. Everything was on DatPiff. Everyone was throwing shit on whatever website you can find it on. And there was a few artists, like it was mostly the underground guys, like LP, Blue, a few other artists who dropped shit on Bandcamp, and you were the first one from Chicago that I knew of, at least, that was dropping on Bandcamp, like only, like, strictly, you want my projects, you gotta pay this $7 on Bandcamp. You know what I'm saying, support this way. You know what I'm saying? That's, in retrospect, of course, as adults, I'm like, that shit's hard. Wish I would have paid for them projects back then, you know, but like, I'm kind of curious, though, what was your mindset in that moment to say, I want my money, man. Like, pay me.
You know, when I first got on Bandcamp, it actually had nothing to do with the money and kind of, but it had everything to do with the fact that it was free. As long as I had my WAV files, you know what I mean? I could put my music up somewhere for free, because this is kind of pre-DistroKid. This is, you know, CD Baby was around, but it costs way more money to put your your music in the iTunes store. This is like before streaming for real, for real.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of had SoundCloud, but you didn't necessarily have Spotify's and all that, because I was on it 11 years ago, back in 2010.
Yeah.
I really do forget who had put me onto it, but somebody had put me onto it. And at the very least, I wanted there to be a place where my music could be readily accessible, where I didn't have to spend a whole bunch of money to put it up there. So like, I was really cool with just putting free music up there. And I think that I didn't really start to think about the financial aspect of things until I really started spending serious money on making music. And then at that point I was like, all right, at the very least, I should be out here trying to break even, you know, even if I don't necessarily make a profit off of this music. If I really want people to hear it, I got to work hard enough so that enough people have purchased it so that I've broken even on my investment.
And this is the perfect opportunity for me to kind of segue to like, I've been wanting, like I want to have a more of a platform about like this particular era in hip hop. I don't feel like it gets enough love, right? The blog era in hip hop, to me, like of course I lived through it and kind of grew up in it, but like that era is the #2 era in hip hop to me. I guess the number like right behind the 90s. I'm putting it above the early 2000s. I'm putting it above that era as well. I'm putting it. That's the blog era gave us way too many artists and way too much music to just bypass it because of Jay-Z and Nas. Like, I know Jay-Z and Nas was nice in the early 2000s, but that's pretty much, I'm saying that's like the large portion of what it was.
Right.
The blog era gave us like hundreds of rappers and thousands of songs of just amazing of amazement, and it also localized hip hop while also broadening hip hop. Like for instance, I remember like I would go to All Hip Hop, I'll go to Two Dope Boys, I go to Not Right, and then I go to Facebook Drive, and then I go to Ruby Hornet. I'm saying I'm catching on Chicago artists, and I'm catching on the New York and New Orleans and whoever else artists I want to see at the same time. It was a different feeling entirely. And I kind of want to know, as an artist, how was it being a part of that? Because you were on Facebook Drive heavy. You were on Ruby Hornet heavy.
Not heavy. Ruby Hornet has always looked out. Shout out to RTC. I actually
shout out to These Days. These Days was dope.
Yeah, these days too, but These Days was kind of a little later. But the Ruby Hornet, like RTC, I remember I met him because I opened for, or a friend of mine opened for, no, I think I did open for You and I in Madison when I was going to school at the University of Wisconsin, and he was DJing for them.
I forgot about You and I.
Yeah, they're tight too. They had some joints, and Thurs as a solo artist has been
Thurs is nasty.
Yeah,
Thurs is nasty.
So
there's an album I think called Thursday, or Los Angeles, I think. Los Angeles.
Yeah, he's got and I think he's got one about the LA riots that's dope too.
Yes, fire. That's the album 2011 I think it came out. That album was fire.
Yeah, it's fire. Definitely dope. So yeah, no, but I mean like it's crazy that you're saying I'm a part of it, because I always was like back in 07, 08, you know, you grow up in River Forest. River Forest doesn't have a hip hop scene. Like River Forest might not have 4 other rappers. You know what I mean?
You're not lying. You're not lying for sure. I found out you were from River Forest. I was like, did he from River Forest?
Yeah, right.
I was surprised.
Oak Park has a lot of rappers, a lot of really dope rappers.
Yeah, for sure.
But River Forest, like pretty much
Ludacris.
River Forest didn't even have Ludacris. River Forest has and had me.
That's true.
And so you know, what I was tuning into was like Power 92, DJ Ferris's mix show. So like that's how I heard Nas and Jay-Z and Scarface and AZ and State Property. And you know, like when you look back, as much as we talk about how commercialized early 2000s radio rap was, those dudes could rhyme, man. Like all of those like, you know, you could say whatever you wanted about the singles, but you knew if you listened to a freestyle of theirs, you might have to go back to the drawing board. It was like that.
That Rockefeller era, like it was different. Yeah, it was different. That was different.
Dipset, and then that was also like early 2000s where, so like I've always been somebody who's really tried to look for where the rap is at, like where the really dope rap is at. So I'm doing that on the internet because I can't like, I didn't grow up in New York City. I can't walk down the street and there's a cipher. You know what I mean? Like I can't take, one train to another train to get to an industry showcase, or like I can't audition for Freestyle Fridays up at BET. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I've got to study the game from home. So reading the Source magazine, like my taste, it was still pretty limited, but I'm sorry, I interrupted you. What were you saying?
I just said 5 mics. That's all I said. 5 mics.
Yeah, 5 mics. Like, and reading those interviews and those reviews and listening to the MCs who made those albums and having, a DSL hookup in the crib, and that being the gateway to so much more music. So by the time the blog era hit, it was almost like a sensory overload situation, because now I have access to so much music from so many MCs.
Yes, bro. Like
so many places. So like,
it got crazy.
Two Dope Boys was dope because it would be like, I would be on there, and I don't think I've ever landed there. But that was the blog I used to follow.
Surprised by that.
I'm not. I was and that was it. That kind of seemed like I'm not. That seemed kind of bitter, but it was more so just like I'm not surprised about it. Just because I don't think I've worked to earn that spot yet. And like what the blog era did was it kind of diversified all of our tastes. So it was, when in the 2000s, and I know you remember this, in the 2000s, it was really stratified, where you had the underground, you had mainstream, you had like indie hip hop, which was kind of in the middle of the two. And, the way it was marketed or the way it was presented to us by critics, it was like you had to pick a side. And then you get to 09 and Freddie Gibbs is rhyming over Big L beats. And then it's like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, all right, so this is what's next then. Or you had, Danny Brown rhyming this to a grime instrumental. There was just so much, like I started learning about rappers in the UK and Canada and
like to your point, like we were talking about earlier, the 2000s, like we named Defcee, we named Rockefeller, we named G Unit. That's all New York. You know what I'm saying? Like once so like in the early 2000s, it's all New York until Atlanta gets a snapping and the game comes through. But outside of that, it's all New York.
But here's the thing that I think a lot of people don't really remember as well, because everybody remembers, like, there's like a pre-Kanye and a post-Kanye thing that we always talk about.
Yeah.
But like, it felt so good to see Twista win to the extent that he did with Kamikaze. Like that felt so good, because for years you have people who pit like Twista, for better or for worse, and it's not his fault whatsoever, was positioned as like, this is what Chicago hip hop sounds like.
Yeah.
A lot of people played it to the left, like he couldn't actually rhyme like that, or like Do or Die couldn't actually rhyme like that, or Crucial Conflict couldn't actually rhyme like that. So, to be able to see him win, that really felt like such a vindication. Also because he was like the one MC from here who stayed home. Like he was nationally and internationally known, and he could do that from here. So,
and he repped it hard. He repped Chicago to the fullest. Like when he was like popping, like at his highest. Like I can't think of an artist other than like maybe Common, who from Chicago came out, truly went global, and at their peak was all Chicago. Like Twista just, you know what I'm saying? When he got that Rockefeller chain, I feel like a family member got that shit. I was saying,
like when you heard him out rhyming their best MCs on that Garden Champions joint.
Oh
like
my
when
God.
you heard, that was my favorite. My favorite thing was to hear people try to stand next to Twista on a song, and like you would realize about 4 to 6 bars in that you really did not what you were getting yourself into.
Facts.
People also people don't talk enough about his influence or Twista's influence, or no, his influence or Bone Thugs' influence on what music sounds like today.
Yeah, the double take.
Yeah, and so like,
double time.
Yeah. So the early 2000s for me, we, of course, we all kind of have our favorite New York rapper or New York rappers or Philly rappers from that era, but there was a lot of really good music that was being made around the country. There was from the West Coast, there was underground, like I was watching Dilated Peoples on Rap City. You know what I mean? Cali Agents and Planet Asia, you know,
Like,
people.
and even to that point, like I remember, like for me, I didn't really fall. I was always hip hop fans, hip hop my whole life. First album I ever bought was a Kumanai, but like I didn't really like fall in love with hip hop like to the point where I had to listen to it all day until I got in high school, got a laptop, and downloaded every catalog I could find. Man, when I did that, it was like, oh, this is different. Like it's too much. Like it's like when I was growing up, like you only heard was on the radio. That's all you really ever heard, unless you was digging crates or going to the barbershop and getting a bunch of mixtapes. Like it was hard to find like a bunch of music, like especially from like old music when we were so young. So when I was able to get into like when I was able to get my hands on Jay Dilla's catalog, it was over with. Like when I was able to find Slum Village, like Beyond, Selfish, and Tainted, I'm saying like them kind of things, like definitely, I feel like that I credit that to the internet / blog era of us being able to backtrack into catalogs and us being able to kind of just destroy those regional barriers.
Because those only really existed, you know, in our heads, right?
Yeah, for real.
It was back when like music was more of a physical product. Now it's more digital and fluid. But back then it was literally, you know, I have to decide whether I'm spending my $20 on this Goody Mob or Mob Deep. And I've got to figure out from this track list in the singles which ones I want to get.
Right.
So like, you're literally competing for you know, your terrain in the marketplace. You're trying to stake your claim and mark your territory and say like, you know, I got the Midwest on lock, I got New York on lock, I got the South on lock. You know, you're trying to, so there was a whole lot more of that competition because rap was more of a physical product.
Absolutely.
You know, it'd be the same thing if you know what I'm saying, sold cars, or, you know, I run a used dealership on this block, somebody else runs a used dealership on the next block, and now I've got to figure out how to compete with them for customers. It was the same thing. The blog era did in the free release of music, and all that did is it democratized so much. And so now, you know, you've got to learn the rules, I would argue, in order to know how to break the rules in terms of how you market your music, how you sell your music, and then also how you make and release your music.
So I remember going to FYE and putting on their headphones to just sample 30-second samples of the album. Like I can't imagine doing that today. Like I'll go crazy. Like all I get is 30 seconds. That's it. That's all I get. But
we were going off of the. I remember at my middle school, it was the Billboard website where you could listen to samples on the Billboard chart. So, you know, I really loved the first 15 seconds of Annie Up when I was 10 because I just kept listening to that
I used to go on original hip hop lyrics archive and just print the lyrics out, read lyrics. Like it's crazy the things we had to do back then compared to now, and just kind of marginalize the gaps. Like we're talking about the early 2000s to now. I want to know, like, what do you think the biggest change in music has been in your 10 years of making music, 10 plus years making music now, as you go on to 14 years of making music? Like, what has changed the most from day one to today?
I mean,
like, not as far as your creation of music. I'm sure there's a lot changed there, but just as far as the landscape.
I mean, that's the crazy thing, though. It's like, where do you start? There have been so many things that have changed over the past 14 years because you have the internet, right? Which is like, enough said. You have the internet. You have kind of the collapse and restructuring of the music industry at the expense of the artists on major record labels and artists who use digital streaming platforms. You have, you know, there's such a low barrier of entry now where, you know, I'm talking to you on a MacBook. If I have a MacBook, I can record music, you know, even if I don't have a MacBook, there are apps, you know, I have a student who records demos on his phone and sends them to me, and they don't sound that bad, you know?
That's crazy.
So it's definitely difficult to figure out where to start. But maybe if we're talking, just to kind of narrow the focus, the music industry,
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest change there is that a lot of these numbers and these metrics, people are really starting to play the music industry like they would the stock market.
Really are, man. And from a fan perspective, it's like it's so disheartening at points. Like, man, like I'm at a point now I don't even look for new artists. I'm like, if I catch one, I catch one. Like whoever making music, I listen to them and just find them now. It's impossible. It's literally like there's a new game every week, basically. A new piece moved on the chessboard that I gotta suffer through because I'm a fan. It's like, come on, man, just give me the good music. Call it a day, Just give me the tools.
Hey, look, and that's kind of been the cool thing about Twitter. One of the few cool things, as I now am an old man who's been on Twitter 12 years, and I can tell you that the negatives far outweigh the positives. But one of the cool things about Twitter has been finding people from literally all over the world who kind of share a similar passion for the same kinds of music, and
sure.
people who are willing to push themselves outside of their comfort zones to check out music that they might not normally be into, because they just want to hear something dope. It doesn't matter if I say that this is, it's like, one man's trash is truly another man's treasure, or vice versa on the internet now. So
it's definitely a more of a recommendation thing. I feel like these days, like if somebody tells you, "Hey, this is dope," I'm gonna check it out. But like I think it's hard for me to go to scroll through like Apple Music, just pick a random album and listen to these days. Like I remember it was definitely like back in the blog era, like going back to that a little bit. Like you can go to Two Dope Boys. I just pick a random. I literally listened. I found Freddie Gibbs because Two Dope Boys posted him. I listened to this guy got an album called Midwest Cadillac.
That was my. No, I had been up on, I think that was the one that like sold me on Freddie.
Yeah.
And the one that got me into Freddie was The Miseducation of Freddie Gibbs.
Oh my God, man.
Really flamboyant freestyle where I heard that and I was like, I've never heard anybody rhyme on a beat like this, this is rapping on it before. And then also there was just kind of like he's from Gary. I want to see him win. He's from somewhere where there's like, he's the only hero. I want to see him win. And he's from the Midwest. I want to see him win. I
think you just uncovered a weird reason why I've been liking Freddie Gibbs all these years. This man started off with a project, like 2 projects based off of Lauryn Hill and an Outkast album. Never thought of that before. I never even thought of that. That's like me. I listen to Lauryn Hill, Outkast all day to this day. Like, of course I love this guy. So yes, it's amazing. I didn't even think about that before. That's crazy. I forgot about The Miseducation of Freddie Gibbs. I gotta listen to that again. That's crazy.
Yeah, man. He's got some crazy freestyles on that one.
Gibbs is my favorite rapper right now. I feel like making music today. I feel like if Gibbs is on, I'm pushing play for the most part.
Right, and that was the cool thing about the blog era, because I felt the same way about anything that had featuring Sean Price or produced by DJ Premier on it.
Yeah, man.
I'm there. Or if Add 2 is on it, and that's not because I work with him, but it was because I was so excited to see somebody that I knew on Two Dope Boys.
Add 2 was he was big bubbling back then. Like, Add 2 was getting love back then, man. Add 2, shout out to Add 2 again. Just for
and he's still crazy. He's probably a better rapper now and a better musician now than he was back then, and he was already nice. Man, so I mean,
he beat me in spades last year. So I don't know how I feel about him, man. I don't know how I feel about him. I'm joking. Oh man, but that's incredible. I definitely want to ask you about. We talked about a little bit the conscious sound that I'm a fan of, and you mentioned kind of how you're a fan of as well. But of course, I don't use the term conscious really. I hate that term a little bit. Mm-hmm. But do you think that stigma still exists? I remember when Kendrick and J. Cole first came out, they were being attacked. I think Kendrick even has a bar about "Don't call me conscious" like Common and Kweli. Like that was like the 2 rappers to mention when you mention conscious. Tyler, Kweli, and Common. Like, how do you think that stigma still exists?
Nah, because I think we have more of an understanding of our artists as 3-dimensional human beings. I think, obviously it's not, different people like different music for different reasons. So it's not a majority of people who feel that way, but I do feel like, if I talk to a high schooler about what kind of music they're into, they might say Ice Cube, they might say Dr. Dre, they might say 50 Cent, they might say a bunch of names that we may be surprised that they're familiar with, but they're familiar with that, and they're familiar with, you know, the stuff that other people their age are listening to now. Yeah. So I think, and you know, you also have MCs who just are not afraid to show every side of themselves now. So, you know, like, so I think a lot of the labeling that happens really is kind of, it feels more so like a matter of public image now as opposed to content, because we know that, like, if you rhyme, you have the capability to make any kind of song about any kind of subject. So I don't really feel like conscious rap is really that much of a stigma anymore. I do feel like there are a lot of rappers who call themselves conscious who are doing themselves a disservice. Because
people still I need an example. Who's calling themselves conscious in 2021?
No, I'm just saying, like, you know, it's the random people on Twitter recommend that you follow this person. You know, you might run into if you go to college, you might run into somebody like that at an open mic, you know. So
you don't box yourself in, people. Don't box yourself in.
No, and then also I think it when you rap, when you talk about stuff like that, there's also an element of, you know, condescension to it as well. I listen to this kind of music. So your taste is beneath me, versus there might be something that you can, you know, I was definitely 100% that person at one point.
Me too.
But I think that what I've learned since then is, if I'm gonna expand my taste and really try to listen to a bunch of different MCs with a bunch of different styles, it'll make me a better rapper, but I also appreciate a lot more as a listener as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And like, for me, like, I'm very open with listening to music. I listen to everything for the most part. I try to. It's just certain things, after a while, I just know, okay, this person's making that now. I'm gonna leave that person alone. I'm gonna leave that alone for now. I'll catch you when I catch you. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's some artists, it's just not for me. I just know that I'm okay with that. I think that's an important part of being a human as well, just knowing what your preference is and accepting it to a certain extent, but still being open enough to try new things elsewhere. You know what I'm saying? Which is definitely a necessity. And I definitely want to get into like the work, which I add to a few times in this session, and I want to talk about more so the work you're doing in hip hop, the work you're doing in the culture. I've seen you move around with young Chicago authors for years now. I see you and Ad Two are doing the artist workshop. I think it's called Lyrical Workshop.
MC Workshop.
MC Workshop. I'm sorry about that, boss. And just talk about that and the what your goals are with that, and what's going on with that entirely, especially in COVID.
So Rec Shop, I mean, the history of Rec Shop, it initially started as a private rap workshop that I was doing through a social worker in Oak Park. It was, we tried to start our own nonprofit. It was me and a producer named Sev Severe, who's one of the illest producers out here right now. He and I are actually working on an album. And he's in Oregon.
Wasn't he on Damn Near Grown? He's on there, right?
Yeah, he produced Timeless. All of My Heroes did Dope in Peace Park. So those were his joints off that album. And he's in Oregon right now getting his PhD because he's a genius at everything.
Man,
yeah. So we'd started it in Oak Park. Kevin Koval from YCA, shout out to him, who had actually taught me when I was in YCA as a kid. Saw Troy at a radio station. Troy mentioned Sev mentioned what we had been doing as far as the social worker, the workshops through the social worker in Oak Park. And then Kevin just decided to bring us on board because YCA was starting up something called the Teaching Artist Corps, where they had 6 teaching artists from around the Chicagoland area, and we were implementing different programming in different schools, in CPS, in alternative schools. I worked in the Cook County Juvenile Transfer and Detention Center, and then I had Rec Shop as well on Saturdays. Yeah, so I've been co-facilitating Rec Shop for almost 10 years now. And then like, I think this is the 8th year. And then Ad and I have been co-facilitating it together since 2017, I believe.
Man, it's dope.
So,
and talk about the work you're doing with the kids. With that.
So, I mean, what's crazy is it's not really all kids. So we've had like a wide variety. Like I would say probably the typical participant is like late teens, early to mid 20s. We've had people, who are even older than Ad2 and myself in the workshop, where this is kind of their return to writing. We've had 10 or 11-year-olds in our workshop. You know,
check y'all out, man.
Yeah. And just kind of like every skill level of experience, age in between. And so, yeah, I mean, we listen to rap, we discuss current events in hip hop. We write raps together. So, and then we also, Ad and I co-facilitate, and we're trying to figure out how to do it remotely again. We did it remotely already once. The MC Olympics, which is a competition. It's not a battle. It's more so just kind of like a competition. MCs compete in different events. It's dope. Like I'm really fortunate.
Looking for a judge, sign me up. Looking for a judge, let me know.
Oh yeah, no doubt, man. I got you. Absolutely.
Also, before two more questions before we get you out of here. I don't want to hold the whole day up, but
man, I'm here. What you want to talk about? What we doing?
For sure. Next, I just want to know, like, because of course you dropped a dope project with Nick Arcade, 2020. See Nick. I was kind of just curious, man. What's next for Defcee? We were seeing you work with the MC Rec Shop at Ad2. We know you're. I'm sure you're always writing. I seen you do a dope performance for the green slime. That was super ill. What else you got in the works?
For me, what I've got going on next. The next thing that I'm gonna drop is an EP with a producer named August Fanon, who's August has worked with Westside Gun. He's worked with Makami. He's worked with
that's my realm. All right.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
I'm really lucky. He and I have worked on something that's really special, that has a concept that's very near and dear to me. And I would like to release that hopefully within the next month. We've got the cover art lined up for it. We just kind of need to nail down the mixing and mastering. I've got an album with a producer who I always kind of looked up to and admired, named Messiah Music, out of Baltimore. He's worked with Earl Sweatshirt, Arm & Hammer, Makami, Apathy. Incredibly accomplished, and in addition to being a very talented producer, is also a really wonderful dude. So you're gonna hear a lot of music from the two of us this year. Def Prez album with Crash Prez and Knows the Time, that's coming this year.
Okay.
That's I mean, like and it's crazy because when you have all of this stuff in the stash, like this isn't conceptualized, this is actual music, and you know what it sounds like. Man, I'm telling you, the project with me, Slime, and Solar 5 is ridiculous. We're about 7 songs into that.
Yeah, Slime is dope, and that project with Kari still in rotation for me. So Slime is super dope.
Yeah, Slime and Solar 5, and I think that's
really.
I think the three of us making a project together. The really dope thing is we kind of have there's like a certain area where like the Venn diagram intersects between the three of us, but we also all have at this point kind of developed our own unique followings that are now going to be familiar with the other two people's work. And like, I cannot wait for some of the people who have been following my music for the past few years to like really tune into what Slime and Solar 5 are doing, because those dudes are two of the best rappers out here, like on the planet. And they're doing some crazy top 5 rapping on this album. I'm working on the album with Seb Severe. I'm working on what's going to be the next solo project. So, you know, I have a lot. I'm working on an album that's pretty much done with my guy Golden Beats from from Portland by way of Seattle, who's super crazy. And a lot of this stuff is years in the making. So this year, you guys are going to get a lot of music that I've been working on for a very long time, polishing and perfecting. And you're going to be, the ways in which you're going to be receiving it and the people who I'm working with are people who I've admired for quite some time. So,
and hopefully when these all drop, like hopefully by that time, like the world be open, you can perform this shit, man. Like I can only imagine that it had to be a bug that's been bothering you during this past time, but it's not being able to perform for real.
And I'll tell you, even more than I think the live performance stuff, I think I miss ciphering, you know, and that's what I love about Rec Shop is being able to sit in a room full of young people just rhyming, and having some sort of kinship to that energy.
I know, man. I see you in a few Zoom workshops on Instagram. Like it's like it was some illness going on in there.
Hey, man, I'm trying. And you know, now that I have the opportunity to do a lot of work from home, it's been good to be able to like really take my time and try to figure out what my delivery is, and you know, take my time with perfecting these projects. Like the Scenic EP came together in 8 days from when I started writing to when it was mastered. And in those eight days, it wasn't like I was sitting down with the beat and it's like bar 1, bar 16 hook. Like I was just writing down couplets and bars that were in my head, and then I was just building around them as I sat down with each beat. So
yeah, and I didn't get to tell you, but at the beginning of this talk we're having, well, I mentioned that I had some artists in mind that said that I could hear the influence from. And it just reminded me when you mentioned Scenic, because Scenic is when I kind of caught it. I hear a lot of Fonte kind of vibes with you a little bit. Like I hear a little brother inspiration a little bit there.
Word, yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah, that's always
LB 2005 was about one rap group and one rapper for me. So Cage, who had an album named Hell that came out, that's a classic album. And then Little Brother, The Minstrel Show, that album, Fonte's rhyming, like the things he was doing where with rhyme schemes where you would listen, it would be like an A-A-B-A rhyme scheme.
Yeah.
The third bar was like it was an internal rhyme, so it still works. Like
he's a mad genius.
and not only is he that, but also somebody else whose influence is not discussed enough. When you are the person who inspired the biggest pop star,
talk to them,
one of the two biggest pop stars on the face of the planet, you deserve all of the credit that you get.
Like people don't remember, but Lil Brother was definitely on comeback season. Like it was front and center.
And that joint, it was the joint with the Ninth Wonder. It was the same Anita Baker sample from Super Ho by Doom. And it was, or from Hoe Cakes by Doom. Super Ho is Boogie Down Productions. Hoe Cakes by Doom. And it was
rest in peace to the God.
Yeah, rest in peace to wow.
Crazy year last year, man.
Yeah,
crazy year.
But like, you know, just in hearing him and Elzai too on Good Thoughts, and
Elzai still out here killing.
Fonte was on Don't You Got a Man. Fonte was doing like the Percy Miracles, like just so much stuff that Fonte did that was so ahead of its time, and he's still super raw now. Like I don't know.
Because you mentioned Sean Price is like you mentioned you love funny rappers. Fonte's a funny rapper. He's a super lyrical rapper, and he can sing. He uses it all, man.
Yeah. So and just ahead of his time too, in terms of the skits and the characters and the singing and all that stuff. So big shout out to
Minstrel Show is a super classic. Minstrel Show to me, I feel like is one of the most underrated albums like ever. Like it's crazy how no one talks about Minstrel Show enough for me. Like, come on, bring up this album right here. Is no skips. Like, it's none. You can't find one. And lastly, to get you out of here, like, what's in rotation for you right now? Like, outside of like your homies, because you have some dope homies who make dope music, and yourself. What's in your rotation right now? What you listening to these days?
There's a rapper from New York named Theravada who I've been listening to.
I gotta check that out.
He dropped an album called Xenophone or Xenophone that I really like. You know, I'm a big Arm & Hammer fan, big Billy Woods fan, big Ka, you know, fan of Ka and Boldy James.
Ka.
I really, you know, this summer, like I really did the knowledge, and I mess with Future, Young Thug.
Yeah, Young Thug and Future dropped 2 dope albums. Like, they last 2 albums each was like, man, I was like, all right.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, for sure.
Sauce Walker from Houston, who he's got a song called R.I.P. Buddy that's like the best song I've heard all year. So far. Yeah, man, I'm just trying to listen to, I'm really trying to get into music that's going to push my pen or just going to inspire me to write and kind of pull those thoughts into my head. Stove God Cooks.
Oh my God, that man's incredible. Reasonable Drought. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Stove God Cooks. You know, and you know, I'm still tuned into like when Kendrick drops, when Drake drops, you know, when Hove drops, or you know.
We're recording it. We're recording this on Thursday. What's this? February 11th.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time this drops, man, this Judas and Black Messiah soundtrack is going to be out. And let me tell you right now, I have not circled my calendar for an album in a long time, bro. I am excited, bro. I'm like literally ecstatic for this album.
Yeah,
can't believe how happy I am. Just the names on that list. Like I'm gonna hear a G Herbo and Bump J song by this time tomorrow.
Yeah, man. Wow.
I'm excited, bro.
That's like, crazy.
I'm excited, man. Jay-Z's on the song with Nipsey Hussle. Sign me up.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Nipsey had one of the best guest verses. Rest in peace to Nipsey. He had one of the best guest verses all year last year on that Big Sean song. And
yes, bro. Like deep reference. I don't even play the Big Sean part. I just play the first verse and go away. That verse is incredible. Yeah, man. Nipsey Hussle, another legend. We talked about a few legends that have left us early, man. He's definitely up there, man. We talked about MF Doom, Mac Miller, Nipsey Hussle.
John P. Yeah.
Man. Yeah, man. So it's definitely a lot of legends to give love to, man. Appreciate you, Defcee, man. Like I said before, big fan of yours. I'm going to continue to be. I'm gonna check out some. Can't wait till the new music drops. I'm gonna check out one of these MC rec shops, man. See if my pen still works.
Yo, come through, man. I'm telling you, it'll work. I'm telling you, the pen will work when you come to rec shop.
All right, I'm gonna leave Genesis in 09 though. Genesis is gonna stay in 09.
All right, bet. But yeah, man. Anytime, for real. I really appreciate your platform. I appreciate your perspective. This is easily one of my favorite interviews I've ever done.
Man, I appreciate that, bro.
So I really appreciate you doing the knowledge and asking really interesting, thought-provoking questions. And, you know, anytime if I have the opening in my schedule, definitely would love to get back on here with you.
No problem, no question.
One more announcement, just because the contracts have been signed and everything. So Ad2 and I are actually going to have our own show on the Vans YouTube channel, Channel 66. It's going to be called Rec Shop Live. We're going to be shooting the first episode later this month. And
I'm going to need both y'all to come on the podcast together then, man.
Man, yo, I'm more than happy to. I'll talk to Ad and I'll see if we can make that happen.
For sure. Man, it's awesome, man. Say more about it. I'll cut you off there a little bit. Say more about it.
I mean, there's nothing really to talk about yet. So we shoot the first episode of the Vans show later this month, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to being able to kind of take Rec Shop to an entirely new platform. Nice. And I think it's going to be the beginning of a lot of really cool things that we're trying to do for Chicago hip hop artists.
And that's dope, man. I hope to collab with you many more times in the future. Definitely gonna be staying in tune on the music side with you, man, because like I said, I appreciate dope hip hop.
No doubt.
You make that shit.
I gotta send you some of these exclusives too.
Man, please.
Some of these joints.
For sure, man. Hey, love, man. Appreciate you. Tell the wife I said hello. I'm saying all the good stuff.
All right, no doubt.
All right, man. Have a good one.
All right, you too. Thank you.